Good morning, sir.
Aman.
Yesterday, there was a lot of praise in our WhatsApp group regarding your last day's deliberations. So I thought I should compliment you
Thank you.
before we can start today's deliberations. Thanks a lot.
Um, Yesterday we discussed slightly method section, hypothesis development, and a result section. Today we will discuss discussion and conclusion, and I'll discuss my ideas. I'm not a senior researcher, but I'll share some of my ideas. And I've taken these ideas from two sources. One is publishing in AMJ Part 6 discussing the implications. So you will get the slides and discussion and conclusion by John Eric Gray, editorial office AME. Both of these articles are available online. You just type the references and then you will get on the Google these two articles. I would seriously recommend you to read these two articles. These are gold standard articles on how to write a discussion section. So in the discussion section, what is important is that you discuss the relevance of the research. So you have a results section. In the results section, you present the results and the are the hypothesis supported or not supported. Uh, you don't go deeper into the discussion. That is, you don't go at the theoretical level. So you have two levels in a paper. You have a phenomenological level and you have a theoretical level. So phenomenological level is जो आप कर रहे हो अभी, which is just right in front of you. So if you're analyzing the data, that is like a phenomenological level. And the theoretical level is the implications of your immediate research on a higher level. So in the discussion section, you go deeper into your into the relevance of your research. Uh, so you do back and forth with your literature review. So you have a literature review section in the introduction section. Uh, so you have to link your result with your literature review and with your introduction. So you have an introduction, literature review, and your result. In the discussion section, you link your result with the literature review and with the introduction. Uh, that's the difference. That's very important, and it's very important to be humble in your research. Humility and humbleness is very important. You don't have to be braggadocio about the claims of your research. You might read. So, if you're aiming for top journals, it is very important to have a very neutral or humble tone in writing your research. तो ये नहीं होना चाहिए, हिंदी में बोलते हैं फोड़ दिया आज तो वो नहीं होना चाहिए. It should be humble in the sense कि I will show you some. So I have taken a slide example of a verb. So if you look at the languages, the typical cautionary language that we use, academic languages, we use the term academic language is appears, seems, looks like. It appears that the treatment is more effective. It appears that the effect of gender equality on boardroom efficiency and sustainability is higher compared to when the boardroom comprises of all male. It seems that the treatment is more effective. Now, instead of using appears and seems, the author could also use a very normative language. We use the word called normative. The normative language means instead of using the word it appears that the treatment is more the treatment is the best. The treatment is the best is a normative language that you are making a claim of 100% claim कि बस हम ही ने किया है जो किया है और तो बस और लोगों ने कुछ किया ही नहीं है. That's a normative language. So in academic journals we avoid using normative phrases. We tend to use language that is cautionary, humble. So the words are more like it appears, seems, looks like, as if, suggest. The word suggestion is a very humble word. So instead of a normative word would be must. You must do this is a normative language. I suggest you must do this is a humble and cautionary language. The whole academic article is written in a very humble language. This is very important. And if you look at the choice of model, so what is a model verb? Model verb is something that changes the behavior of the verb. So we use model verbs like may, might, could. Now, may, might, could are a very humble word. They make the verb look very humble and very cautionary. You know, it's instead of it's not like you're leading from the front. Leading from the front, you would want to be a more stronger in your language. This is not like leading from the way. It's more about suggesting and being humble to the peer. Because what happens is so as I said in yesterday's lecture, research is a conversation with the people of the same field. So when the people are of the same field, they are all very egoistic. So you want to be very gentle to them, very respectful to them in your language. And so you have to use your language that is respectful, that is including, you're inviting them to the conversation. If you say I am right and you are wrong, there is no conversation. The conversation happens when you say it seems that I like your result and there are a lot of interesting things. I found XYZ in my study. What do you think about it? When you have this kind of an expression, you have a conversation going on. But if you say I'm right and you are wrong, then there is no conversation. The conversation is done. उसी वक्त खत्म होगी conversation. And research is a conversation. You have a conversation with the editor, you have a conversation with the reviewer, and you have a conversation with your peer. That's it. That's a problem with the research because you cannot have a conversation with everyone. You only have conversation with these three people in your research: your community, your peer or your peer group, your reviewer, and your editor. That's it. और किसी से आपकी कोई सरकार पॉलिसी मेकर किसी से कोई कॉन्वर्सेशन नहीं हो रही होती है. आफ्टर मेनी इयर्स ऑफ स्पेशलाइजेशन इन वन फील्ड, द गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया और द गवर्नमेंट और इंटरनेशनल गवर्नमेंट विल ऑटोमेटिकली पिक यू. They will know who you are based on your publications, based on your citations. International audience will automatically know you, who you are. They will pick you up for consultation, for research, for international projects. But your conversation is only with these three people. Yeah, so I go integrate the results with the literature published, explain how your results further the existing studies. So you have to, in your discussion section, you have to discuss the novelty in context. If you have to show in your discussion section, you have to show the novelties. And and there are multiple ways you can show the novelties in your discussion section. And you can discuss like whatever results you get, you can contextualize the result into these important things. The contextualize the result of your research by discussing the context. So every research has different context. You have a assuming you're doing research on Like yesterday, uh, people were doing research on diversification of banking, boardroom, human resource management, e-banking. Uh, they are all interesting and diverse areas. Now, each one of these have a different context. So you discuss the context and you relate the conversation in the literature review and the introduction with the context. Then data. Now, most of the result that we read is an American research or European research. And now it's Hong Kong में भी काफी publish होता है. Shanghai, Beijing is also publishing, and Singapore publishes a lot. Japan hardly publishes in management. They publish in economics, but they don't publish in management, as far as I know. Japanese professors in US publish a lot, but Japanese professors in Japan do not publish. So mostly you would read the publications from Hong Kong, Singapore, Shanghai, Beijing, India, Europe, and United States. That's it. You don't read publications from Brazil, Argentina, not even from Africa. Hardly anyone reads from Africa. That is not to say that Africa is bad. It's just that it is not relevant to us, and there are hardly any African investments in India. So you're not inclined naturally towards African studies. Uh, so data. So normally we read European, American, Hong Kong, Singaporean research. They have their own data. So our novelty comes in the data, and we can discuss the data in the discussion section. What is the novelty in the discussion? Why this data is unique? And what are the implications of this finding, and how these implications relate to the data of other studies? Then method. Uh, there is a high possibility that you might use a different method in your research, uh, but the same research question. You can have a boardroom. So for instance, gender in boardroom is a very interesting research topic. In India it is still not a universally applicable topic, so is in United States, but in Germany and in Scandinavia it's a law that there has to be gender balance in the boardroom, while it is not a law in India and in United States. So gender balance is a very important topic in research, and uh, and it's very difficult to get. Yes, any questions?
Anirudh, hi, Gagan.
Yes, sir.
In fact, your presentation is not visible, and
Oh,
probably you need to stop presenting and then go to my to present now, and then you will see a window whether to present a window or your entire screen. So if you can select the PowerPoint
I
window,
I
that
yeah, I think I need to go out, log off, and
no,
then come back.
no, you don't need to log off. You simply click on, yeah. Yeah, probably when you go to present now, so it
Now,
has
sir,
to be
is it visible?
now you are visible. So you have, yeah, now the presentation seems to be coming. Just a
Yes.
second. Just a second. Yeah, it is now on, but can you do the slideshow? So it will be
Yes.
a bit
Okay.
bigger.
Is that okay?
Perfectly fine. Thank you very much. I'm
Oh,
sorry I
that's fine. That's fine. So you can have in your discussion section, you can discuss the novelty and the implications of the method. It is highly likely that you might be doing so. Let's assume we do not have the data, like a quantitative on a panel data of Indian boardroom. So having a boardroom composition as your Y dependent variable, and independent variable would be uh, performance, stock markets. No, performance would be your dependent variable. So stock market performance would be your dependent variable, and your independent variable would be boardroom composition and various other things that can be added as a control variable in the boardroom side. Uh, so there is a possibility that you just get a qualitative data. What does it mean? You get a data. You do a qualitative study of companies like Biocon, Tata Trust, which Tata Trust has multiple companies. The companies that have women as board of directors of women CEOs. And so you pick and choose 10 or 12 such companies, and you do a qualitative case analysis and show how the companies are behaving with mm, with board and CEOs as women. And you get some interesting insights about how things are. You make a nice model and framework. But the studies, if you look at the Harvard Business School studies and Wharton School studies, you would find that most of the studies are quantitative studies. So you can say that most of these studies are quantitative studies. They are very so typically quantitative studies. You do not have much flexibility in the quantitative studies, while in qualitative studies you have a lot of flexibility in how you interpret the result. But of course, it's difficult to publish qualitative studies compared to quantitative studies, because people tend to consider quantitative studies more robust and rigid compared to qualitative studies. But even how you can still publish it, but not in top journals, but still you can publish it. So you can discuss the method in the discussion section. You can go deeper into the method section. Theory. Now theory of plant behavior, someone said, I do not know what is theory of plant behavior, but if you know what has been published already in the theory of plant behavior and what new insights you bring from your research, you can discuss that in detail uh, in your discussion section. So you can talk about theory a lot, and furthermore you discuss the uniqueness of your result, or difference, or even similarity. So whatever results that you get in your research, you discuss the uniqueness, why they are unique, why they are different. You can also you can discuss the difference of the result from existing studies, or similarity of the results with existing studies. So if you cover these 5 points in your discussion section, uh, and you, when I said discussion, you cover these 5 points, but you have to have a conversation with your literature review and your introduction to in literature, because you have to tie your literature. So the important thing here is you have literature review, you have introduction, your results. These three things are, so you have to tie these three things in your discussion section and make it look like a very good academic piece. And so how do you do that? Your literature review and your introduction is the reason why you're doing your research. So you have to justify the reason. Your literature review, your introduction has a very important component, which is called research question. So of course your research should answer your research question and nothing else. So that has to be there, that your research question is asked. Your research question is embedded in your introduction and in your literature review. uh, and so you have to have a conversation with your literature review and with your introduction, and make it relevant, make it interesting. So some of the points that these points I took from the AMJ editorial piece. The link is below in the presentation. You will get it. Better said, it makes a point of revisiting the study's original theoretical motivation, and you have to do it for a number of reasons. Must include, so you have to revisit the original theoretical motivation. Why are you doing this research? So you again, as I said yesterday, so you have two things in research. uh, One is theoretical and one is phenomenological. uh, Theory is universal. So if you make a theoretical contribution which is very unique, then it is applied universally. Theory is same. Institutional theory, which I use, institutional logics, TMT, top management team, resource-based view, dynamic capabilities. Now, if you make a contribution in a theory, that theory is same for all countries. They remain the same. Uh, so you need to understand what is your theory, and does your research has a theoretical implication. So you need to so in your literature review section, introduction section, you always discuss the theory, what a given theory says about a given phenomena. And so in your discussion section, you revisit the reason why you were doing your research, what was the theoretical lacuna or the gap, and then you try to answer some of the theoretical implications of your research and you try the literature review with the theory and your result into your discussion section. Must include a return to the work's theoretical catalyst is a means of effecting orderly completion. Recap affords a basis on which to assess the progress on the mission of resolving a theoretical puzzle. So this is a slightly I not sure, because this is I took these so next 3 or 4 slides I took completely from Academy of Management journal, and so they have a certain way of looking at the things. So when I'm reading this stuff, I'm actually reading what the Academy of Management journal is looking at. So so it's very important. So an Academy of Management journal, which is the top highest A-star journal, top 4 journals in management: Academy of Management, Journal of Marketing, Journal of Marketing Research, AER, American Economic Review, और कौन सा journal है? तो Academy of Management Review, AMJ, AMR, Operational Research, Management Science, Marketing Research, sorry, Journal of Marketing Research, Journal of Marketing, and Academy of Management American Economic Review. These 4 or 5 journals are considered top journals, A-star journal. Like if you get into these journals, like you're the boss. Very hard to get into journal, and you have to be trained. You have to be in the right group to get into these journals. If you're not in the right group, becomes very difficult to get in these 4 or 5 journals. But anyways, must include a return to work's theoretical catalyst is a means of effecting orderly completion. So you have to in your discussion section, you have to go to uh, what is the main theoretical motivation. So you have to talk to the literature review and the introduction, because that's where you write the theoretical side of your research. The original theoretical question need not be perfectly solved. The investigation may, for example, have uncovered some unanticipated issues or problematic assumptions. Nevertheless, revisiting theoretical motivation affords a valid reference point, one appreciated by authors and readers alike. So here's the thing. Again, I reread this. The original theoretical question did not be perfectly solved. The investigation may, for example, have uncovered some unanticipated issues or problematic assumptions. Nevertheless, revisiting theoretical motivation affords a valid reference point, one appreciated by authors and readers alike. So here, now, what does it mean? That your theory is based on certain assumptions. Your theory may have certain limitations and certain phenomena. Now, when you are in the discussion section, you can always challenge or have a discussion on the assumptions of the theory, on the theory, on the rigidity of the theory, and on the application of the theory in a particular setting. And if you discuss these 3 things, the assumption, the application, and the weakness of the theory in your discussion section, then your theoretical contribution would be visible. And that this discussion might take 200-400 words of your discussion section. 400 word का होता है. The total discussion section is between 800 words and 1200 words for a 40-page article, 40 or 35-page article. Your discussion section is typically 800 to 1200 words, and so this theoretical discussion can take almost 400 words, and it has to be really interesting. Second, a return to the original theoretical motivation of a paper affords a means to cogently and succinctly address so what question. Now, in let me highlight this. Now, it is very important in research. Your peers can be hard on you. When I say hard on you, the typical question that any researcher asks a other researcher is, so what? अगर आपने ये किया तो क्या हो गया? अगर आपने ये रिसर्च करी तो क्या हो गया? So this is called so what question. So you really have to tie the so what question, and it's very important in the research community that you only talk to your peers. If you start talking to people outside your research community, उनको समझ में नहीं आएगा आप कर क्या रहे हो, और फिर आप फ्रस्ट्रेट हो जाओगे. So you have to know what is your research community and you talk to your research community, because they will understand what you're doing and they will give you the right feedback. They're all there to help you, not to discourage you. But if you go outside your research community, whatever your research field is or your research peers are, उनको समझ में ही नहीं आएगा क्या कर रहे हैं, they will start discouraging you. So avoid. So once you know what is your research field and you know who your peers are, you only talk to them and share and get their feedback, because research is a conversation. Get their feedback to develop your research papers. And try to avoid talking to people outside your field, and if they don't understand it, never talk to them, because अगर उनको अभी समझ में नहीं आया तो उनको आगे भी समझ में नहीं आएगा. Very important. जब किसी को समझ में नहीं आया, they will start discouraging you. So don't do that. This is a common practice all over in rest of the research world, that you talk to people in your research field. Because then you get only positive comments. If you go people who don't understand what you're doing, you will start getting negative comments. You will get frustrated. Among the more common reasons manuscripts are rejected at AMG is their failure to offer a meaningful theoretical advance. So again, these slides I have taken from AMJ, Academy of Management Journal. So there, so every A-star journal, if you look at the A-star journals, they demand theoretical contribution. A and B journals, they are okay with phenomenological contribution, but A-star journal is all about theory. So you have to focus a lot on theory, and that's why this discussion section is a lot on theory. So you have to once you written your paper, you really have to nuancely analyze the theory that has been written previously and how your research adds to the existing theory, and that has to be clearly done. Now I try to give you an example here. So assuming now entrepreneurs is one of my research areas. So the existing theory, if you look at the entrepreneurship teaching pedagogy, the pedagogy in entrepreneurship is driven by planned behavior, that you plan everything. Okay, so everything is driven by planning, that you plan X, you plan Y, you plan Z, then the risk of failing is very low, right? That's one way, one study. But if you look at the literature by Saraswati on effectuation, so Saraswati says, and the bricolage. So bricolage is a French word that means you jump into the water and you learn to swim on your own. That is called effectuation. Bricolage is whatever you have around you, you make the best use of it, and you make your second move. You take a second step. Whatever you learn in your first step and whatever you gain in your first step, you make the best use of it to succeed in your second step. This is called bricolage. And effectuation is you jump into the water and you learn to swim as a thing go, which is contrary to planning. You make your decisions through proper planning. And so here you challenge an existing theory and you have a new theory which is effectuation, and so you have a longer theoretical contribution. So Saraswati, when she completed her PhD, she got 2 articles, one on AMR and one on AMJ. उसके बाद उसने एक भी publish नहीं किया, but she became world famous after this theory, Saraswati, on effectuation. Okay, so the point I'm trying to make is that she, in her research paper, she challenged the existing theory and came up with a new theory called effectuation. And then her discussion section was completely focused on making a contrast with the existing theory, which is you do your research, you start a business through proper planning, and contrasted it with effectuation, which is about swimming in the water, learning to swim while you are drowning. Discussion section affords a venue in which to answer this question more robustly than before and to articulate in a richer fashion how the study changes, challenges, or otherwise fundamentally refines understanding of extent theory. So again, it's AMG, and AMG is all about theoretical contribution. So you really have to really have to focus on how unique your contribution is. So you have to use some nice words to make it look like you are making a good theoretical contribution. Any questions until this? We will have questions so that we move forward in the right direction. Can I have questions? If you have questions, please feel free to ask me. Okay, so I'm moving forward.
So good morning.
Yes, sir.
Just one question, sir. Uh,
Yes.
is it possible of course, this is very ambitious thing which I'm asking. As you told that if you bring new theory or you challenge the existing theory in a significant manner, is it possible to do this with the quantitative studies, or usually it is done through the exploratory studies?
See, it is challenging a theory is a very ambitious thing. Don't challenge a theory. In my opinion, uh, don't go into this whole idea of challenging a theory. You can provide, you can like, you can challenge a theory to some extent, but don't provide a new theory. Here, ye meri nai theory. Don't get into that level. You can certainly challenge it, and challenge it in a very softer and very subtle tone, and and have a conversation of why this theory is not so interesting. Now, challenging a theory can be done through conceptual paper also. So if you look at the Academy of Management Review, so Academy of Management Review is a journal that only publishes conceptual studies. It's a A-star journal of management. So Academy of Management Review, it's a purely conceptual study paper journal. So you can challenge a theory through conceptual means also. A lot of articles. So if you read the articles of AMR, they are all conceptual articles. They are not empirical articles. They are not qualitative quantitative articles, but they are only conceptual articles, and they only discuss the theory. Harvard Business Review. Harvard Business Review is a mix of conceptual studies and qualitative empirical studies. So you can certainly do that. Yeah, no issues. The difference is AMR. So I know AMR. There must be other articles also, other journals also similar to AMR, and you can publish a conceptual paper there. In order to publish a conceptual paper, which no, challenging a theory is a very conceptual thing. So you need to have a very robust argumentation, a robust discussion on why the theory is weak, where the theory is weak, what are the underlying assumptions that make the theory weak, how you can challenge the assumptions, how you can make the theory strong. So you can challenge a theory and make it stronger, but completely belittling the theory is very difficult, very difficult, because anything becomes a theory after multiple studies. You don't make a theory just one person says so, and the research is theory. It doesn't happen from one person. Hundreds of people do hundreds of studies, only then a theory becomes a theory. It doesn't happen ki I or Saraswati said, and so effectuation became a theory. It's not like this. Saraswati proposed through her two articles on AMG and AMR effectuation, and then multiple people tested her theory into multiple context, multiple methods, context, method, uh, and other settings to validate the theory, and then it becomes a theory. So theory per se takes many years, and many researchers to so it's you need, as I said, research is a community. So you are in a community. So Saraswati is in the community of researchers who only study entrepreneurship. Now, the problem with entrepreneurship has very few theories. Entrepreneurship orientation, risk taking by Schumpeter. Uh, then you have plant behavior is also interesting theory for entrepreneurship. Risk taking is a theory one can use for entrepreneurship. The risk taking, cost benefit analysis is a theory that is used in economics, also applied to entrepreneurship. But these theories, they never used to tell कि यार ये बंदा succeed हो गया पर दूसरा बंदा succeed नहीं हो रहा है. ये difference क्या है? Steve Jobs आगे निकल गया. There are so many people around Steve Jobs more qualified, better in mathematics, but not able to succeed like Steve Jobs. So that kind of a theory, nobody knew कि यार ये क्यों हो रहा है. An infatuation sort of come and explains why Steve Jobs succeed, but other people are not succeeding. Why somebody who dropped out of Harvard University, Bill Gates, succeeded, which is not explained by a theory of plant behavior, but many people who got PhDs from Harvard University, working like analysts in investment banks, not even becoming partners. So those things were explained by fluctuation in a way. That doesn't mean fluctuation is a good theory, but it does the job of explaining a certain phenomena जो लोगों को समझ में नहीं आ रहा है. So it is not challenging, but it's a way that explains an unexplained phenomena. So if, in your field, can you give me example in your field which is unexplained? If you can give me example from your field where unexplained, maybe.
I'm not that well read about the whole of my field yet, so it's difficult for me to give you such kind of
Yeah, so
details.
I would say don't go avoid anything that says कि आज तो मैंने नया करना है. That doesn't work like, because as I said, you can, so you it's like एक building बनी हुई है. You cannot destroy the building and say कि मैं नई building बनाऊंगा. You always add one stone in the building, and the building is your research field. So you only add one or two stones in that building and make the building look nicer, or different or unique, or complete the building, make it more robust. That's how the thing goes. And remember, as I said, research is a community. Okay, if you take your own independent path in the research and the community does not follow you, then it's useless. Research is a community. So you do not take an independent path. That's also a weakness of the research. So you never take an independent path. You have to know your field, you need to know your community, and you always work with the community. You help each other out. It's a very political field also, so you have to help each other out. Yes. So I would say don't venture into something where nobody else is going, because then it's become very difficult. It takes time. At the moment you can so everything that I'm telling you, you can disagree with me. That is perfectly fine. I'm telling you what I learned in my PhD. And many people may disagree with me. So I am being very conservative, very European in that sense. But your call. As I said, the constraint is that you are you when your peer tell you you are who. So it's a peer driven field. You cannot go out of your peers. And if you do something new and your peers do not follow you, then that new is useless, because as I said, you are known by your citations and your peer group. So yeah, so that's how I see it. Some empirical findings may be unexpected or even contrary to expectations. In that case, reconciliation is in order. So too in further examination of causal arguments to help readers and indeed the field at large to better understand the underlying phenomena. So again, in your research, in your results section, you can have some very interesting findings, which might be counterintuitive. So given if you use a theory, so as I said, let's assume a theory of plant behavior. Theory of plant behavior might say that if you plan X, Y, Z, you might get a better result. That's a theory of plant behavior. So an entrepreneur who is taught in the school of theory of plant behavior would be taught business model canvas, writing a good business plan, doing market analysis, doing risk analysis, doing return analysis, and then when the business plan is completed and then you start your own company, you would highly succeed. That's a theory of planned behavior. However, the market is not efficient. The market is inefficient because there is a mafia in the market, there is government in the market, government intervention, there is political intervention in the market. So as an entrepreneur, whatever you have planned will never succeed because second person, who is your direct competitor, has a very good government setting, knows the mafia. So in that case, that entrepreneur who knows the mafia, has a very good relation with the government, would rise up faster, even though he's not educated, even he doesn't have a good business plan. So your theory of planned behavior fails in that case. That doesn't mean the theory of planned behavior is wrong. It's just that in that particular context, it is not working. So you have to add something. So you have to come up with something new or something different, like political entrepreneurship or something new. You can certainly come up with those ideas. So discussion section, in my opinion, is between 800 to 1200 words, and you have to. So your first para could be 200 to 400 words. Your second para could be 2 to 400 words, and your third para and your fourth para could be something like this. You write your research questions, sub-research questions, write your hypothesis, where they stand. So you have to write it in a different word. You have to contextualize it and discuss your hypothesis, answers, your research question, how your research is answered. That's your first para. Your second para, you discuss your first hypothesis. So and then how your first hypothesis answers the research question, what literature is getting addressed, what are the larger implications of your first finding, and the greater discussions on the implications of the research on the existing literature. Then you go to hypothesis 2, hypothesis 3. So that's how you can structure your discussion section. So this slide, I took this slide from discussion by John Irie Gray. Very interesting. So this paper, you can find it online. If you look at the language that they have used, it's a very humble language, very subtle, and not an imposing language. So research is all about respecting the other person, trying to open up a conversation. The research is about opening the conversation, not closing the conversation. uh, if 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 someone says I'm right, you are wrong, the conversation will never go forward. But if someone says, oh, what you have done is very interesting, I want to learn from it, I found this result by using your studies, can you comment on it, that's an immediate conversation you have with the other person. It doesn't really matter if the person has published hundreds of papers, you can still have a conversation. And the person you are sitting next to in a research setting, he is only interested in your research, nothing else. So, and you should be interested in his or her research. If that is an open door, then you have a nice conversation. The more conversations you have in the research, within your research community, the more citations you will have, the better quality of publications you will have, and the higher you will move in the academic ladder. So if you look at the word, so adjectives of probability, it is possible that the treatment is, so it is possible. uh, no, it is possible is a very it's not 100% certainty, it is not a uncertainty, but it's more than 50% certainty. So very humble kind of way of writing it. uh, we the authors think that XYZ has more effect on ABC than previously done studies. More importantly, when I say previously done studies, you can quote 2 or 3 studies and write 1 or 2 lines about what those studies did. Okay, so immediately you have a contribution and you relate your conversation with the existing literature. We, the authors, believe that XYZ, when combined with ABC, may affect LMN. This is unique and different uh, um, from the results conducted by John and Nash in their paper on XYZ. So, and then you discuss more what XYZ paper wrote, and then how your paper adds more value. So you immediately relate this conversation with the literature review. Nouns of probability: high, strong, good, possibility, good chance. There's a good chance that the treatment is more effective. Uh, so again, uh, I strongly believe that A will have a better result than C. A will have a better result. This is one way of saying I strongly believe. Our study shows, so the normative statement would be I strongly believe that A will have a better chance of succeeding than B. Uh, no, I strongly believe that A is better than B. So this is the normative statement. Now I can turn this statement and write our study shows that the probability that A will succeed in a given condition than C is higher. Uh, so this is a more research, more academic language. So you're not being very normative, but you're bringing the assumption, the context into that statement, and then saying why A or when A might have a higher chance of succeeding than C. That is a perfect. That is more like academic language. So given X, it can be said that Y. Given these findings, it can be said that the treatment is more effective. Given X, it can be said Y. Uh, Again, so given X is a context. So given the context of India, where we see a strong socio-political interaction with firms, we might see that much of our planned actions in the context of India may lead to uh, to results that require higher due diligence and higher risk assessment. Now, this statement is kind of saying that India is an inefficient market compared to United States, but you will not say that directly. You would bring in the context of what makes India inefficient compared to United States, and then make a statement. So it's the language should not be normative. It should be more inclusive, conciliatory, and subtle. Not very hedging. So the word that they've used is hedging, cautious or hedging. You hedge your risk, because if you say something, if you claim something that is not entirely true, the reviewers will kill your article. Your peer will go against you. Mistakes that you might make in your discussion section: rehashing result, meandering, and overreaching. Rehashing results: the transition from the results to a discussion marks a change in narrative's focus from reviewing what emerged in the study to explaining why the findings are important and how they change the conversation that the research joins. A common mistake authors make is to devote too much discussion to summarizing and resummarizing the results of their hypothesis test, while devoting too little attention to explaining what these results mean, why these results are important, how these results relate to the introduction to the research question and to the literature review. Meandering: the second kind of mistake authors make in their discussion section is when the narrative references numerous theoretical implications, some or all of which seem disconnected from each other or the paper's hook. So when you write a research paper, you should focus only on one or two theories. That's it. If you go more than one theory is perfect. If you focus only on one theory, then it's perfect. If you write two theories, it's okay, but not more than two theories. And so if you start to say कि मेरी रिसर्च ने ये भी कर लिया, मेरी रिसर्च ने डायनेमिक कैपेबिलिटीज में भी कर लिया, मेरी रिसर्च ने पोटस 5 फोर्सेस में भी कर लिया, मेरी रिसर्च CSR को भी कंट्रीब्यूट कर रही है, मेरी रिसर्च, if you end up saying कि my research is doing contribution in multiple 10-15 fields, then it's not done. Then then the paper, yeah, then it's not a good paper, because it's simply not possible. And you really have to, skillfully weave your paper. It's like sweater bunna, paper writing is sweater को बुनना कहते हैं, या वो आपको बैठ कर स्वेटर जैसे बुनते हैं लोग धूप में बैठकर. That's it. This is what paper writing is. So you really have to have a focus. It can be a boring job, because you don't know if your research has any global implications or not. It takes 10, 15, 20 years for the research to have global implications. So you really have to focus theoretical in your theoretical hook. So every paper has one or two hooks. You should not move out of those hooks. Overreaching. A third mistake authors make in their discussion section was deriving sweeping conclusions that outstrip the data. So as I said, the normative statement, you cannot make sweeping conclusions. Your conclusion or should reflect the limitations of your theory, your data, and your results. If you end up making, so when you're writing a sentence, your sentence should be humble, context oriented. In the context of India, in a given research setting, we found this. We believe this has uh, unique implications on XYZ compared to the studies done by Porter's work, compared to the study on compared to studies using Porter's work in NASDAQ. Something like this, and that sentence, Porter's study in NASDAQ, should be there in literature review. You should not go out of the literature review in your discussion section. You should mash the discussion section with the literature review and the introduction. Yes, so I am done with the discussion section. I'll start with journals. Any questions on that?
Hello, Anirudh?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah,
Yes,
hi,
ma'am.
Nancy this side. I have a query with respect to the theoretical contribution in the discussion section. So,
Yes, ma'am.
like nowadays we work on like interdisciplinary research. So similarly, my topic of research is on economics of happiness. So there
Yes.
is a challenge that I face in terms of how and what kind of theory should I pick up on, because obviously since it's interdisciplinary and as you mentioned, maximum we should go for is 2 theories or ideally 1. What criteria
Yes.
should we follow as to which theory is the most appropriate for this kind of a topic, this kind of a research? And I mean, is it not possible that we come across quite a few and instead of just 1 or 2, we can cater to 2, 3, or probably 4, considering it's an interdisciplinary research?
So, economics of happiness, what journals have already published on that? And what are they using?
You're not audible.
Hook your article. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, yes.
Can you hear me? Yes.
Yes.
So you have to study what journals are writing on economics of happiness, what all they have written, what data they have used, what theories they have used. You have to hook on those theories and those data only, and slightly tweak either theory or data. You cannot tweak both of them. So and that's where you will make the contribution. As I said, you are having a conversation with your peer. That's the research is about. So in economics of happiness, you must be having your peers from all over the world. See what they have written in the last 3 or 4 years on economics of happiness. What theory they have used. So you have to use the same theory. Or if in their discussion section and conclusion section, they must be writing limitations. So you can read the limitation section in the discussion section and in the conclusion section and see what limitations they are talking about, and then your research will address those limitations. That's also perfectly fine. In the limitation section, they must be talking about the theoretical limitation, and they must be suggesting what theory should be picked to study what. You can pick those theory, and you can make suggestions for future studies. That is also possible, but don't think that since it is interdisciplinary, this is not the way you look at the world. That's a very policy making decision. The policy makers want कि आप एक दूसरे से बातें करो, that is okay, but the research is very straightforward. You choose your field. If your field is economics of happiness, you figure out what the people are writing, which conferences they go, and within the conference, if you every conference has a method section, a theory section, and see what are they talking about. You have to get into that conversation. That's it, nothing else. That's more than enough. And then you have to, so it's this conversation. So this conversation is like the person, you don't know the person, but in your field that person will become your best friend, and you would want to have the feedback of that person, and you would find it amazing that everyone, once you know your field, you know your community, they are there to help you out. You can reach out to them on researchgate, send a direct email to them. They are there to help you out. Okay, does that answer your question?
Oh, yes, yes, yes. Thank you so much.
Pleasure is mine.
Hello.
Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
So this is Pooja Mehta from Aurobindo College itself. Uh,
Yes, ma'am.
so my question pertains to the structuring of paper as far as the last parts of the paper is concerned, particularly after data analysis. Many of the paper, when I see they are writing after data analysis, it is discussion and then conclusion. Whereas others, they are writing first discussion, second theoretical contribution, next managerial contribution, and then conclusion. Whereas the third type of papers are they are doing discussion and implication and then conclusion. So my question is as to what
Ma'am,
should be the approach for that.
no, so if you look at the many journals, they have a structure.
Yeah.
So when you कहने का मतलब है जो आपका contribution है वो तो contribution रहेगा ही रहेगा. Okay, but some journals explicitly ask you to write it down your managerial contribution, theoretical contribution. So there is a section. So when you plan to submit your research paper for a given XYZ journal, so journal has a template that your paper should look like that, and it should have these sections. So you have to do that. So some specific journal publications, you need to have a, as you said, a theoretical contribution and a managerial contribution. You do that. Some have a different approach. So that's a, so when you write a paper, uh, either way. You can, I would say, that goes with the journal really, but you need to have managerial and theoretical contributions well written into the discussion section, and depending on the demands of the journal, you can make a section, you can turn that paragraph into a section. Yeah, that's how I see it.
Okay, so as you said, Emerald particularly, they obviously give us the proper structure for that. I many a times get confused to demarcate between discussion and theoretical implication, particularly. So could you please
Ma'am,
highlight?
in my humble opinion, I would say theoretical implications should be inside the discussion section only. Okay,
Yes,
now
yes.
you can have a subheading, of theoretical implication
Okay.
within the discussion section, or you may not, your call in the end. Many people do, many people have a subheading, uh, theoretical implications, and then you have a detailed discussion on the theoretical implications. uh, that's my advice to you, that you cannot get
Okay.
away with it. You have to have a theoretical discussion within the discussion section, and
Okay.
while you are doing your theoretical discussion, you can have a subheading by the word theoretical implications, but you have to do it. There is no getting away with it.
Okay. So okay. Thank you so much.
Pleasure's mine. Okay, so I'm going to discuss briefly on the journal patterns, and yeah, then we'll be done with the conversation. So a selection of journals. You need to select your, first you need to know your research field. You need to know your top researchers of your field. Uh, Journals most, and you need to read the articles of your field, what articles are written on your field, and what articles are citing the article, what journals are being cited in the article. So every article cites certain journals, so you need to know what journals these articles are citing, and then based on that you select your journals, your field, top researchers. It is highly likely everyone wants to, and that should be your goal when you write a research paper. You should always aim for the top, and then you slowly come down, and that's the game you play. A star, A, B, C, uh, and that's perfectly fine. Really, I mean, I know a lot of people who publish in top journals and they haven't got citations, and there are a lot of, so Einstein is a fantastic example. Einstein published his article on photoelectric effect in a very low ranking journal, and he got a Nobel Prize for it, because he couldn't, and that too was written in German, not even in English. And he got, so journal ranking matters if you're in a top, if you're aiming for a position in a top university, because top universities hire only those people who have published in A-star journals. If you want to get into Oxford, Harvard, Wharton, you have to have A-star publications. That's the only thing they look at, nothing else. While you can publish in any journal, your call in the end, but it should be a legitimate peer-reviewed journal, good journal, and it should have, it should cover the elements we already discussed. So you start from the top. You select your, so in the management field, Academy of Management Journal, AMJ, it's an interdisciplinary journal in the sense that it's not field specific. You can basically publish anything related to management in AMJ. Similarly, AMR, Academy of Management Review, you can pretty much publish anything in AMR, but these are top A-star journals. Then Journal of Management, again A-star journal. Journal of Management is a A-star journal. Then Journal of Management Studies, JMS, again A-star journal. JIPS, if you're writing research on international strategy, then the research paper that goes is Journal of International Business Studies, JIPS. Um, Again, A-star journal, very difficult to get into it. Then if you're writing purely on strategic management, quantitative studies on strategic management, then the best journal is SMJ, Strategic Management Journal. A-star journal, very good journal, strategic management. Um, if you're writing research um, on India specific studies, then you go to age. So the studies are purely India specific, then it's very hard to get into A-star journals. And then you go into A journals. So A journals could be Journal of Business Research, Journal of World Business, Asia Management Journal, Asia Journal of Asian Studies, something like that. But what you look at, you need to know your research field, what the researchers are citing, what are the top researchers, where are they publishing. You basically have to publish in those journals only. You don't have a choice. What other? But you have to be pragmatic. So what I mean by pragmatic is you should know you should know who you are, what is your capability, and then target the journal. तो ये ना हो कि आपने पेपर लिखा है, आप A-स्टार में भेज दो, वहां से पेपर रिजेक्ट हो जाए और आप मोटिवेशन लूज कर जाओ. मोटिवेशन लूज नहीं करना होता है. you know uh, it's a very you have to be thick skinned in the research. You have to पेपर भेजते रहो, अपने पेपर रिजेक्ट होते रहेंगे. मोटिवेशन लूज नहीं करनी होती. You have to play, it's called game, playing the game. uh, that there is ABDC journalist. Are you guys? Do you guys know what is ABDC journalist? Please let me know if you know or you don't know. People, do you guys know what is ABDC journalist? Okay, good. So every one of you know, so I will not go into that. Now, somehow, unfortunately, In India, I'm coming across a lot. It has become a gold standard. You have to have a ABDC publication. Now, is it relevant or not? It's a very controversial thing. But somehow in India, people, because in India we want quick answers, so everyone has to follow ABDC journal list now. Is it right or wrong? That's your call. I have no comments on it. Quality, of course, in order to get into ABDC list, you need to have a proper quality of method, proper quality of contribution, and sometimes, not always, your co-authors and their academic reputation has an effect on publication. So sometimes, not always. I've seen it once happening. My supervisor told me about this thing. He was very particular about it, and so it may matter, the academic reputation of the co-authors. So how do you get into top journals, or the desk of the top journals? So should, in order to avoid a desk reject, structure of paper, it should match the journal requirement. So every journal has a requirement. Your paper should match the journal requirement. Okay, spell check, grammar check, it should be clean. There is no the general hygiene is bad, the paper will desk rejected. Academic language should be academic. Must have research questions, sub research questions. Introduction should be well written, bringing the latest literature of the field. Research methods should be proper, structured. It should be reliable. It should have a reliability, validity, and repeatability. Results properly discussed. Should have a discussion section with contribution and conclusion properly written. If you follow the basic structure of the paper, you should avoid. There's a high chance that you may avoid the desk reject and get into the peer review process. Once you are into the peer review process, it's basically back and forth. Okay, I'm done with the lecture. Thank you. Okay, guys, I have completed the lecture. If you have questions, you're most welcome, or I will log off. Please let me know. Let me call Gagan, sir.
I'm here, Anirudh.
Yes, sir. Sir, I'm done with the lecture.
Yeah. So maybe there will be some people who have some questions, or if they don't have, I can request you for a couple, maybe one point which I think that can be talked about. But before that, let's take their questions if there are any.
Yes, sir.
Guys, do you have some questions for Anirudh from today and yesterday's talks? If you have, we'll be happy to deliberate on those.
Anirudh, I have a question. Again, getting back to the same discussion section, I think you happen to show us the structure of the discussion section where how we should start, because what we usually do is the same. One of the mistakes that you mentioned, the very first one, which highlights on talking more on re-summarizing the results of the hypothesis and the tests again in the discussion. So we tend to do that. Till today, we have been starting with the discussion at least on those lines. So if you could just go to that slide again and show what should be the structure for the discussion section. Where you also talked about the word limits in the discussion section.
In my opinion, sir, can you also jump into this conversation?
Of course, I'm here.
Okay.
Sure.
Yes, sir. So, what do you think? How do you think the discussion section should be framed, in your opinion, in your experience? Because in this lecture, I took the data purely from Academy of Management Journal, and I agree with them. Everyone agrees with them that it's more about relating the discussion section with the literature review with the result, with the research question, with the introduction, and going and ensuring there is a significant level of contribution, but not outlandish contribution, because which is not possible. And that comes with practice, lots of practice. The more you write, the more you practice the art of writing, the better you would become. And sometimes I feel that it's playing with the words. So the problem with qualitative articles is playing with the words. The more you are good at playing with the words, uh, the better you can hedge the risk of overreacting or rehashing the results. But you end up playing with the words and telling a narrative to the reviewer or the editor that you're being very humble, and you are limiting to your research setting only, without going outside the boundaries or the outside the limitations that your research setting might pose on you. But sometimes it's playing with the word that comes with the practice. The more you write, the more you practice, it becomes better. And you have to work with different people in order to learn your mistakes and unlearn your mistakes. That's how I see it. What is your opinion, sir?
Yeah. No, I totally agree with the points that you have made and the examples you have taken from the journals of the top quality. In fact, Academy of Management, you have taken those examples. My only kind of point which I would like to put in complementation or as a supplementary concept point to what you have already said, Anirudh, is that uh, we have to there are two approaches which one may follow. One is the top-down approach where we take the top journals and then we try to reach their uh, 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 see them as a gold standard and then try to borrow from their conceptual guidelines or whatever. The other idea I think is that one may look at the journals which our work is actually capable of publishing as of now in the current state. For example, if I take the example of the paper which you and I we did together on the Google Trends. Now we cannot simply say that the paper is of the quality of Academy of Management Perspectives, though Academy of Management Perspective does publish something like that. They are interested, but we ourselves can evaluate our work in an unbiased manner and say that no, we have not produced something of that
Yes.
level yet. So how do I write the discussion? Is the discussion similar in all the papers, whether it is a A-star paper or a B paper or a A paper? Is the discussion similar? I think uh, it is important to look at the horses for courses kind of approach, where we see what kind of journal are we targeting, and then we do the discussion section accordingly. For example, I'll give a couple of examples. For example, we did a paper on how renewable energy can contribute to the cause of economic growth. Now, this is very clear that if you use it renewable energy, environment would be better. And if the environment is better, you would have to spend that much less on the environmental protection, on the things of that sort. Plus, if you are spending lesser on environment, on the other hand, what you will also see, you would have lesser carbon emissions. Therefore, there will be some positives which would be coming to you in terms of the environmental things, which are non-monetary or non-financial things to look from the naked eye. But if we look at it from a deeper perspective, there are economic relations. And we found through a quantitative study that there are renewable energy usage has a positive impact on the economic growth. Now, again, the question that is so very usual to come is the one that Anirudh said. So what? If this is true, so what? So I think my discussion section usually, and I want all of you to understand this in the right spirit. Uh, I'm taking a leaf out of Anirudh's book and saying only one sentence which would probably guide you through the discussion section in totality. Your discussion section should try to answer the question, so what? That is it. How, if you have said that I have found this, now that you have found this, what are the implications? For example, if your work is connected in one way or the other with the sustainable development goals, So what are you contributing towards the sustainable development goals? How do you think the sustainable development goals can be met in a better way through your findings, or something else which you can say with respect to the sustainable development goals through your results? How are your results helpful in attainment of sustainable development goals, for example? Or for that matter, suppose you are doing a work on COVID-19, and say you are doing a work on how entrepreneurship should respond to the COVID-19 crisis, and you have found something. Now, from there, what should be the strategic challenge? What should be the strategic response that entrepreneurs should do in response to the COVID-19? What different should they do? So that is again an answer to the question called "So what?" But while answering the question, so what, you have to have an eye on what the theory is saying. So what is the theory in that field? Looking at the theory in the field vis-a-vis looking at your own results, through both of those, one may try and respond to this, that this is the existing theory, this is the challenge that we are experiencing, these are our findings. So how are we taking the existing theory? As Anirudh said, I do not recommend that everyone should challenge the existing theories, but how the existing theory which is available vis-a-vis the challenge which we are facing, how can my findings take the existing theory towards that challenge? So how can we assist in application of the theory in a better way? So something around that I think is important. So discussion section, to me, I have found a very simple mantra to write the discussion section now. My discussion section responds to a self-generated question which I am asking myself on behalf of the research community, which is asking me, so what? If you have found this, so what? So please try to answer that question in your research, in your discussion section, but don't forget that you have a reference, you have a context of the existing research theories. So stay within that framework and do it. So my answer, in fact, my part in the deliberation is more in a deliberative manner. As Anirudh said, and I also agree that we are no senior researchers, and in fact, there is no senior researcher in the world who would say that I know everything, right? A good researcher is the one who always says that I need to learn more things. So in that way, I'm sure all of you can participate and share your thoughts. It is the workshop is more about talking rather than one-way talking. It is more about two-way talking. So I leave it up to others to participate and comment upon what Anirudh said, what I said. If you have some comments about that, if you have some further queries about that, we can talk about those. Anirudh.
I totally agree with you, sir. And ladies and gentlemen, one thing, you should always ask questions from Gagan, sir. He is the best. I've never met somebody so hardworking. So engage with Gagan, sir, a lot. I think he's one of the finest researchers in India. And it's a pleasure working with Gagan, sir.
That's a bit too much. That's a bit too much, Anirudh. That's a bit too much. But yeah, we are here to help each other. That there's no denying the fact. We are here to help each other. Yes, guys, are you okay with the answers that we both of us gave, or do you have some more questions that you want to raise, or you want to participate in the discussion? Please.
Gagan sir, this is my question. As per what you discussed about answering the so what question also in the discussion section, so the policy implications that generally are given in the end of the research paper, does that answer the so what question also?
You want to answer, Anirudh? You want to take it?
So what happens is the policy implications can be quite outlandish. So you can actually move out of the scope of the paper and make really pompous policy implications. That happens in 99% of the papers. Okay, that can be interesting in certain journals, but if you're aiming for A and A star journals, that doesn't fly. So in B and C journals, that can be okay, but A and A star you cannot. So in energy policy, you can have 3 or 4 lines on policy implication that can be outlandish, 3 or 4 lines, not more. But rest of the implications is purely based on the literature review and the introduction. So energy policy, I know because I've read those journals. But if you go and yeah, so policy implications, 2 or 3 lines, it's okay, but that doesn't always answer. So what, unless and until you really embed your discussion in the literature review, in the result, uh, and then you extend the literature review with your results in the discussion section, that's how you kind of make it interesting. And you can certainly have 2 3 outlandish policy implications, uh, which is slightly outside the scope, but that is not the hook of your paper. The hook of your paper is really your results, your method, your literature review, and that is what you have to kind of add value in your discussion section. That's how I see it. So just writing policy implications is not enough, in my opinion.
Yeah. So in one of my recent talks to some of the closed groups that I'm working with, I stated that in the policy implications are one part of what does it imply, but what is even more important for a research paper of the practical implication. I mean, there are two types of implications that can be there. One the papers may look at the giving the theoretical contribution. The other, there can be some papers which are making the practical contribution. So the papers that are making the practical contribution, for example, if it is Anirudh rightly said that in entrepreneurship there are very rare theories. So if you're doing something on social entrepreneurship, I think your work would be more of practical relevance rather than theoretical relevance. And similarly, if you are working in energy policy, our work is more of practical relevance than theoretical relevance. So I would like to see as a reviewer and as an editor, what exactly are you doing or what exactly are you advising in terms of stepwise policy? For example, if I'm doing something on the energy policy, what exactly is my strategy? So I know that countries should shift to renewable energy. That's fine. What's new in that? Or what is your contribution in that? Nothing. So what should I do as a researcher to make my study more impactful? Probably I can come up with the idea that in the sustainable policy, in the phase one of the sustainable policy, this is what I think government may plan to do. And then this would be the second phase of the policy. This would be the third phase of the policy. So rather than simply saying that countries should shift to renewable energy, which is a well-known fact, there's nothing big in that, right? Now, the point is that can you give something more concrete like a researcher? Can you think like a researcher and give something like this is a phase one of the sustainable policy that the country may follow, right? Or this is something which say India can learn from Germany. For example, in another work of ongoing work of ours, uh, 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 Germany and Australia have done very well in curtailing or flattening the COVID-19 curve, and not only flattening. Germans' experience is not about flattening the curve; it is more about curtailing the mortality. There's hardly any mortality in Germany. On the other hand, if you look at Australia, the curve has been flattened like anything. In India, both the challenges have not been managed. Our curve is not flattened. In fact, day before yesterday, we recorded 6,100 new cases, which is the highest ever in India, and we are seeing a big number of deaths. So, what are we supposed to learn from German experience and from the Australian experience? Can there be a stepwise thing? So, step one was we imposed lockdown, which has nearly failed because we have failed to curtail the curve. Now, what is the second step? Can you come up with something like this? If you're working on COVID, can you come up with something like this, that this is the second step? This is the second step for which the experience is from Germany. Now, Germany is not India. India is not Germany. German population is nothing as compared to Indian population. Indian healthcare infrastructure is nothing as compared to German healthcare infrastructure. So, given these limitations, what are your stepwise strategies rather than simply saying, yeah.
Very complicated with India. India and COVID-19, it's very complicated because my sister is in healthcare, so she's frustrated big time. And she advises Aam Aadmi Party government. So, very complicated. Sir, I will take a lead now. Please
No
excuse
problem,
me.
Manu.
Thank you.
Hello.
With a pleasure.
Yeah,
Hello.
I'll take the
Yes.
questions if there are any, but Anirudh has to leave. So thank you very much, Anirudh.
Yes. I just wish to formally thank him, sir. Nothing more than that. There was no question
Thank
as
you, ma'am.
such.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Dr. Anirudh. Thank you.
So friends, Anirudh has left, but in the meantime, if you have any questions from his discussion of yesterday and today, we can take it up. And also, I would need Ajay sir's advice on whether we should do the two analysis which we had remaining from the previous lecture of mine. But before that, if there are any questions from what Anirudh discussed yesterday and today, I'll be glad to take those up.
Good morning, sir. Mahesh this side.
Anji.
Though this question is not directly to what Anirudh sir has discussed yesterday and today, but of course this was somewhat shared in between this workshop. Can you enlighten us a little bit on about the systematic review?
About the?
Systematic review.
Oh, in fact, Mahesh, I can do that, but I think that will be a totally different thing than what we are discussing through this workshop. So probably in some other day we can have another 2 hours deliberation on what is systematic literature review. But though I can answer it right now in 2 minutes, very briefly, but uh, in detail it will take it will totally derail our discussion which we are into. So I would not take longer to answer that, but since you have asked and it's my duty to respond to your question. So I simply have to say that systematic literature reviews is a kind of practice which has come from the medical sciences. Medical sciences used to review the papers in a way which is more transparent, which is more replicable, and which is more structured. In management or social sciences, there was no such practice, but in 2001, there was a paper which came from Trenfield, Denier, and Smart, which wrote in detail about how to apply or adopt systematic literature reviews in social sciences. So from then onwards, social scientists have taken a lead and tried to make their reviews a bit more A, transparent, B, replicable, 3, structured. So those papers or that methodology has developed itself in the form of a systematic reviewing methodology.
Right, sir. Thank you.
Hello, Gagan. I was feeling that there are few steps of the softwares are left earlier.
Yeah.
So we will like to complete that at the first instance. And then we are having a small valedictory where our Director Education, Dr. Sushil Kumar, will also be there, maybe for 10 minutes or so. So I think it's 11:30 now. So we can expect half an hour or more.
Sir,
So that I can give him the time.
Is it possible that we begin my session at 11:40 and then I conclude by 12:15, and then we give the valedictory from 12:15 to 12:30? Is that okay?
Ah, that's okay. That's okay.
So guys, let's take a break for 10 minutes. Even I'll take a break for 10 minutes, and the session can be left on, and let's come back by 11:40.
Okay, we will be sending the new ID because we will be stopping the meeting here,
Right.
and we will joining after 10 minutes.
Sure, sir.
That's okay. Thank you.